Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. I have two brand new guests on. I have Bill and Lisa Woolley on. They have a story that's just is absolutely horrific. Their oldest daughter got caught in addiction after being prescribed opioids when she was 15 for an injury. Due to the dangers of her addictive lifestyle at the time, they ended up with taking guardianship of both of her children. However, on March 30th of 2018, one of the children was found dead in his crib and an investigation was launched. Wagoner County believed they killed him and sexually molested him due to a rogue detective who determined before arriving at the scene that there is no such thing as a SIDS death, and so it must be murder. This is what he told his supervisor en route to the scene. He also personally attended the autopsy, standing right next to the medical examiner the whole time. Now, they all along have ignored tons of exonerating, exculpatory evidence that they could have taken that would have settled this in the very first week. They just didn't do it. Now, these people, Bill and Lisa Woolley, were arrested on April 12th, 2018, with accusations of molestation of their older grandson, who is 5, and they were in jail for 4 months awaiting a preliminary hearing. Now, they've got quite the story to tell, and I'm very sorry you went through all of this. Welcome to the podcast, and, you can tell your story more if you like, and where are you at now?
Well, thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. Right.
Where are we at now? They dismissed all the charges. In March, it'll be 2 years. They tried 26 charges, 26 ways against us and our daughter, and they dropped them all finally. They changed them, amended them, tried this route, that route, and then they finally dropped them all in March. It'll be 2 years in March, like I said. So for the last couple of years, we've just been living our life, but trying to get our older grandson back and have our family restored, but they have refused and they have kept him. There are certain people that have statutory authority who can help restore him to the family, like Jack Thorpe, the DA, the Judge Elizabeth Brown, and seems to me there's the guardian herself could do it,
and the grandchild.
And the grandchild could do it, and and the DHS could recommend it, and they could also take the initial accusations against us that they called substantiated, and they could change it to unsubstantiated in the face of mountains of evidence that they have but refuse to acknowledge. So we're in this fight for the last 2 years to have our grandson restored. Our daughter's in the fight. We're fighting together. We've done prayer protests and pickets at DHS, at the courthouse. We've had billboard campaigns all over town, yard signs. Some of the yard signs actually were in his neighborhood where he lives, and apparently some of the neighbors saw it and they contacted the website, the rescueclayton.com website, and said, hey, I know your grandson, and he is not in a good situation at all. He runs away whenever he gets a chance, but he says that they keep him locked up, and he'll run away a lot of times to try to hide over here. And so anyway, he told us all about this, and we were like, holy cow. So we asked if we could call him, and he said we could call him. And so we called, and we asked what else he could tell us, and he said he's been here several times. The police have been called on him. They haul him off. His grandmother's chasing him. The police are chasing him, and he's going from house to house, trying to find safety, hiding under cars, fighting the police officers, struggling to not be put in the car. And he told these neighbors if they make me go back there, he said, I just want to kill myself. They're so mean to me there. I want to kill myself.
And this is a foster home?
At the time it was. She has since gotten guardianship
Oh,
through some trickery
mhm.
with my daughter. That was the guardianship option was presented to my daughter in court, but it was everything about it wasn't disclosed to her, so she didn't really know what she was signing. They told her it would be the fastest way to get him back, and actually it was a much harder way to get him back. So now we're fighting against that. She immediately sent in, as soon as she realized that she'd made a mistake, her attorney, the attorney she had at the time, didn't know much about it, and by her own admission, she didn't know much about it. So she called her civil attorney after she got out of court, and he said, oh, you shouldn't have signed that, and explained all the things that they hadn't told her. And so anyway, so she immediately sent to the judge an urgent letter saying, urgent, stop immediately. I want to resend my signature. I wasn't told everything. And the judge received that, though the judge lied about it and said she didn't do it. Yet we have an email from the judge acknowledging that she did receive it. So anyway, now we're having that fight to get that signature rescinded, as well as having the judge recuse herself because of very obvious bias. And she has blocked us 5-6 times. We've done motions and petitions, and she just doesn't even acknowledge them. Of course, after we found out his dangerous situation, my daughter immediately went and filed an emergency placement hearing. And according to statutes, the judge has 72 hours to get that child to safety and have a hearing. She just ignored it. That never even mentioned it till 5 weeks later, where she told our attorney that she talked to the DHS, and the DHS told her they looked into it and it didn't warrant any intervention. It wasn't serious enough. So we were just blown away. It was like, when a kid is saying he wants to take his own life, and he's running away every time he gets a chance, and they don't want to look into it, so they're just burying it. Nobody's acknowledging it. Everybody's burying it. We've got these witnesses on recording. There was another witness across the street. Her and her little son watched Clayton run from door to door, frantically pounding on doors, trying to get into safety, and have somebody let him in. He was hiding under cars. And this wasn't an isolated incident. According to the witnesses, this was happening regularly. But so we're in this situation like this, where we're having a judge that just ignores everything we submit, and the district judge over her, who won't make her do her job, and he keeps passing it back to her, because according to statutes, if she doesn't do what she's supposed to do, he's supposed to do it within 24 hours. But they just cover for each other. I mean, I don't know what to say about that. It's very sad, but no one's really, really looking out for our grandson.
How old is he now?
He's 10 now.
Oh,
He was 5 when they took him. And every accusation they made has been debunked by professionals. We've had 5 professionals. In fact, the number 1 professional doctor we had is Dr. Robert Block, who has been the DHS's and the court system and the DA's office, has been their go-to doctor for years. Everybody reveres Dr. Block. And he has only, he's testified hundreds of times, and only, I think, twice for the defense, and we're one of those 2. So this is how rare it is. But he looked at all the evidence and the autopsy photos and everything. He said this couldn't have happened. And they're still ignoring their guy. And so we've also had Dr. Schmidt, chief medical examiner of Detroit. Recently, just in the last few months, Dr. Bruno from Oklahoma City, who's a pediatric colorectal specialist, who looked at the x-ray of the baby's colon and said nothing happened here. He looked at the other evidence along with it. the baby's colon in the X-ray is shown. You can see this on the website, rescueclayton.com. You can see the colon is full of feces. And that's one thing he pointed out is if this child was molested, all this feces would be displaced.
Mhm.
And it's not. So, and he said that he had a problem called, what did he call it? Functional constipation. He constantly had bouts of constipation. We put smooth move laxative tea in every one of his bottles just to keep him regular. We also had 2 top psychologists in Oklahoma, unrelated to each other, where Bill went through very extensive, horrible exams that no man should have to go through, including a physical response test that showed he has absolutely no response to children, no attraction whatsoever. And he was cleanly exonerated by those. So now it's 5 top experts, renowned experts, and still they are refusing to acknowledge those things and return our grandson. So I don't know what else they want. I don't know how many experts it takes. You know, does it take 6? Does it take 10? Does it take 20? I don't know what that magic number is.
Are you getting any more calls from neighbors about him running away at all? I mean, are neighbors still in touch with you?
A couple of them have our phone number, 2 of them that came forward. We'll probably, you know, do some more yard signs. Apparently he saw one of the yard signs, and what's printed on the yard sign, there's a picture, and then it also says, your family will never stop fighting for you. And according to the foster mom at the time, he saw one of those signs, and he cried. He was crying. And so she told the judge was very angry about that, angry at us because we made him cry. But I think that's the message he needed to hear, is that we are fighting for you. I think he's been led to believe that we don't want him anymore, that we've given up on him. We found a lot of falsities in my daughter's paperwork from the trauma counselors and things of what Clayton has said to them, how he still, after 5 years, still wants to go home, still misses his family. And he's just blocked. Nobody cares what he wants. It's all about, I don't know why. I think maybe they think if he gets out, he'll say things that will get them in trouble or something. I can't quite figure it out why they're fighting so hard to keep him when he's made it clear that he feels safe with us. And in fact, his very first interview, they put him through 6 or 7 interviews, which you probably know you're only supposed to put a child through 1 interview, and that the first interview is considered the most reliable. He was interviewed at school before he even knew that his brother had passed or anything had happened. And the DHS supervisor investigator went and interviewed him along with his school counselor and a few other people attending, and asked him questions like, how are things at home? Oh, good, you know. And are you ever afraid of anything at home? No. He said, I'm only afraid of rattlesnakes. And and does anybody ever get hurt in your home? He said, no one ever gets hurt in my house. Very direct answers, saying no to every question that they ask him. And the prosecution hid that interview from us for a year. It took a while before it turned up. Somebody who worked for DHS, who used to work for DHS, said, hey, they always do a first interview. Why don't you have that? We're like, oh. So we started pursuing it. They kept blocking it. I think we had to get a judge involved or a legal help to be able to get them to release it to us. And there was another, all the interviews were exonerating except for the same nurse interview, SANE, sexual abuse nurse examiner, which had no witnesses and wasn't recorded. And that's the one, that hearsay interview was the one that they used to run with. And they got a judge to rubber stamp it. And that's what, landed us in jail the first time. So anyway, this second interview that they also hid, the nurse, they did a first forensic interview with a trained forensic interviewer, and it was clean. And then they did a sane nurse interview with no witnesses and had wild accusations that were opposite of everything he said in all the other interviews. And then,
Those were done on the same day.
yes, and then after that, they wanted to get it on recording because they're like, oh, this is good, So the DA ordered another forensic interviewer by their top interviewer. And in this one, she says, didn't you just tell the same nurse the other day about, what happened with brother Elijah's butt and his privates? And Clayton said, no, like that conversation never happened. It was made up. And so they hid that from us. That's another one that they hid from us. We had to fight to get all this stuff. The detective left a lot of exculpatory evidence at the scene. We had 2 weeks worth of dirty diapers and they left without them. We called them and said, don't you want these? Because you're making accusations of molestation. This should be a gold mine for you. They wouldn't come back and get them. They left the mattress pad that he lay directly on, that when he passed, apparently a bunch of fluid leaked out of him and it had a big 18-inch stain. You would think that they'd want to analyze that for the volume of fluid and what kind of fluid. And because they said he had a bit of pneumonia in one lung. And I'm wondering if he actually had a lot more. But they didn't know how much fluid had leaked out of his lungs.
Oh,
It's crazy. It's just really crazy.
and the thing is, this can happen to anyone.
That's the scary part. If you are in custody of children, or even watching them in this county and they pass away as a baby, well, they don't believe SIDS is real. They don't believe it exists. So there's either it's going to be an obvious thing, like a gunshot, knife, broken neck, there's going to be some obvious trauma, or it's murder. And even if there's no evidence, it's going to be murder. And that's what drove him from the very beginning on his drive to our house. Before he even stepped foot on what they call a crime scene, he was already saying, I'm investigating a murder. And that's scary. Everybody, if that happens in your county, you need to really be careful, because you can end up where we have. If we didn't have family support and all the experts that we were able to find, we would probably be in prison for life, if not the death penalty.
Right. And yes, he told his supervisor en route to here that there is no such thing as a SIDS death. And so he knew it had to be murder. And he didn't deny it. He said it on the stand as well, that it's basically a fallacy. SIDS is a fallacy.
How ignorant.
It is. The real crime here is our grandson. He was 5 when he was taken away. The only family he had ever known. We raised him for those 5 years, pretty much our family, and he's over 10 now, and he has never had personal contact with any family member, extended family member, church family, friends, anybody he knew from his life prior to his brother passing, has never been able to talk to him, communicate to him, or do any contact with him at all. So he was kidnapped out of my sister's lap in the driveway by the police and taken away and never has come back. It's just like he was literally kidnapped, and they have no reason to keep him. Even the district attorney, Jack Thorpe, says that we have no open investigation against this family now, and they should be considered as innocent. Well, if that's the case, we should be considered as innocent, and we should have our guardianship reinstated. And they have refused to do it. They haven't even considered it. And there's been a lot of talk on out there, the whispers saying that he's in the belief that will never let Clayton come back to us.
Yeah, it's crazy because he says we should be treated as innocent, but he's not treating us as innocent. He's definitely not leading by example.
Yeah. They even were trying between the the times we were charged, the first charge is bizarre because it was for a one-time incident where Clayton was going to have to go to school, and he was occasionally he would wet the bed because he was 5. And so I would always shower and get ready for work, and then I would take him to the bus stop. Well, this morning he ended up wetting the bed, so Lisa passed him for him to get rinsed off to me, and I passed him back 30 seconds just to rinse him off so he wouldn't smell like pee going to school. That's the incident that they accused us of molesting him. My privates touched his butt one time in the shower. That was what the charge was for.
Supposedly he said that to the senior.
And so they arrested us for that, and they put a $500,000 bond on both of us, and we were both arrested and spent 4 months in jail for that alone. Then they tried a multi-county grand jury against us to get an indictment for murder, and they brought my daughter as a witness,
Our youngest daughter,
and she testified, and at the results were they did not grant the indictment against us. They refused to. They said this is not true.
This doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up. And so obviously the DA was furious, and they pursued it, and then eventually they charged us 5 days before Christmas with first-degree murder and sexual assault of a minor under 12, and arrested both of us. They refused a bond for me, and Lisa had a $500,000 bond.
Right. So yeah, they thought, I guess in the beginning, I think the detective just thought he had it in the bag because he had a sane nurse saying things he wanted. And then he attended the ME thing, which I don't even know why he would be in there, but he attended the autopsy. And what is confounding to the experts is, looking at her report, everything that she put in there would indicate that everything was normal. Yet when she finishes with her conclusion, she writes that he was sexually, she said that there was trauma to the anus and that he was murdered. So they're like, this report doesn't support her conclusion. And, of course, Dr. Schmidt, from Detroit, he took all those records and tissue samples, and he looked at all the slides and said, there's no injury here. He took all her slides that she sent to him. And it's just crazy because one thing we've learned is that if there's an injury, there's going to be blood infiltration. If there's a cut, there's blood. If there's a gunshot, there's blood. If there's a bruise, there's blood. Contusion, blood. It infiltrates into the surrounding tissues. And so you really can't have injuries without blood infiltration. And so when you take these slides, these tissue samples, what you're looking for, one of the things you're looking for is blood. And there was none at all. And so he gave 3 of his top MEs the slides, told them nothing, no background information, said, check these and tell me what you see. And they checked them and they said, there's nothing on here.
The one thing that the one that passed away had a problem with was chronic constipation. And he would actually pass these golf ball size hard dry stools pretty regularly, and which we found out that caused him to be in what would be called a very early hemorrhoid, and they called that a bruise. And they didn't take the section of it to find out what it was. The one thing we learned was, unless you actually take the tissue sample of that area, your observation, your physical observation tells you only a limited amount of information.
You're just guessing.
You have to understand what the tissues are telling you, and that is only done under microscopes. Well, they for some reason, and I think it's because they don't know what they're doing, because the Tulsa medical examiner, the Oklahoma medical examiner office is not accredited, and they lost their accreditation 20 years ago and never have gotten it back.
Mhm.
And they don't do a lot of infant autopsy.
Right.
Dr. Schmidt does more in 1 year than they have done probably in the entire
Right.
time.
And without being accredited, you really don't have a lot of oversights, accountability standards that you have to meet. You're pretty much, it's kind of scary because there's, when you're accredited, you have standards to meet, you have inspections, you have things you're supposed to do, protocol you're
Tissue
supposed to
samples.
follow. Yeah. And so all of that, that was supposed to be done wasn't done. She made accusations about injuries to the back and injuries to the mouth, which turned out to not be there. And currently we've been getting a lot of feedback for months now that someone in the DA's office is actively circulating autopsy pictures to people in positions of authority and trying to, I guess for shock value, trying to get people to look at him and go, oh, this baby really was molested. Because you look at the pictures and around the baby's anus, there's discoloration. So you could say, oh, that's bruising, but the experts said, no, that's what did he call that? Venous congestion. In other words, blood pooling in the veins around the anus from straining. And or they'll say, oh, look at the anus is dilated, it's all stretched out, he was molested every day. And the doctors explained that as well. And they said when he died, he had that hard, dry stool in his colon and it was starting to come out. And so the anus was dilated because it was starting to come out. Then he died, rigor mortis set in and locked his anus in that position. So his anus was locked in a dilated position.
And the irregular shaped position.
Yeah,
too.
so it's just crazy. They'll take these things and show them to people with an untrained eye, not knowing what they're looking at or how to interpret them, to try to mislead them. And it's shameful to me because they know the explanations, they have the reports, they know what really happened and what it really was, but they're still allowing or perpetrating deception.
The medical examiner, even in her report, from her observations of his body, said that he was a well-nourished, well-formed, developed 14-month-old. And she even said that his anus looked normal. And but yet she turns around and says that he had lacerations, which is like a tearing of the skin where bleeding takes place. But he had what's called fissures. And that's where you stretch the skin and it makes little tiny microscopic breaks. I don't know what but there's no bleeding involved. And that was because of the stools being passed, that he had those hard, dry stools straining and stuff. And in the diapers that they refused to take, 2 weeks worth, there was a bunch of them that had these hard, dry stools. Exactly what we said. Had he been a child that was being molested every day, or what, like they said, every day, which is impractical, he would have been dead a long time ago. But if they had looked at the diapers, there would have to be evidence. This whole thing is bizarre because they had absolutely no evidence. They had no semen, they had no DNA, they had no witnesses, they had nothing.
They checked all our devices for pornography, they were clean. I mean, and they checked the DNA twice and there was no DNA. But they just kept pushing it forward and covering for this detective. We can't figure out why. I guess they're that close. I mean, they really, people who say there's no such thing as like a blue wall, or there's these people in some courthouses that just really bend over backwards to cover for each other. And our case was treated a lot like a hot potato. Well, but I also want to back up and say, even the diaper that he had on, where she said that there was lacerations, had no blood in it. It's not possible to have a laceration without blood.
Right. If he had been molested while being strangulated, he would have had blood in his diaper.
Right. And supposedly these episodes happened in the open living room every day with all the kids running in and out.
with Clayton
Clayton
playing.
watching right here on the couch, and neighborhood kids running in and out. Can I have a popsicle? You know, like
Yeah.
how bizarre. I mean,
Mhm.
and there's no doors in the living room. It's all an open, you know, format. So it doesn't even make any logical sense, but they still hold to it, and it's crazy. We don't even, it's beyond words.
Mhm. So you're just trying to, put up signs, get this child back.
Yeah.
That
We're
he should
trying
have been
everything we
returned to
can.
you.
Yeah, we're doing everything that we can, and we're going through the legal process. We're filing all the motions, we're filing all the petitions, and they're being ignored. We're doing protests to bring media attention. We're doing billboard signs to bring citizens' attention. We're doing yard signs to gather more information, and a lot of it is to communicate to him that we love him and we want him back, because who knows what they're telling him.
Someday he'll know it, you know.
I mean, he had a foster mom that he was asking to come back.
He
Go
said
ahead.
he wanted to go back to Papa and Grandma's house, and the foster mom said, "No, you don't. Remember all the bad things Grandpa did to you?" And he looked at her and said, "No."
That's documented in their information.
And they just ignored it.
Another thing that was documented in his first foster family, he had indicated that somebody in that family hurt him. Well, you're talking about a 5-year-old. Hurt could mean almost anything, like took a candy away from him, pushed him, pulled his hair, pinched him, or raped him. Who knows what it was?
Mhm.
And they never investigated it. They didn't do anything.
No
It was
follow-up.
just ignored. I don't understand how the system works. I just know it's broken.
Oh, beyond. That's a
Yeah.
understatement.
Mhm.
And Fox News has been tracking our story now for like 3 years. I think they've done like 20 pieces, or I think Channel 6 did 1 or 2 also. But
Well, they all did a whole bunch in the beginning.
yeah, they did. Yeah. When we
Yeah.
were accused, everybody jumped on it, you know, and not everybody went back and fixed it though.
They even showed on the news our address in our name, and
Zoomed
we
in
had
on our house.
death threats. We had all kinds of things happening in the beginning.
Yeah, it was terrifying just to go outside, because, you know, we saw the things that they were writing about us, and the neighbors told us to be careful because people were driving by doing this like
Like
Oh.
a gun, you know, if they're gonna shoot our house and stuff. They said, what, you know, tell your kids to be careful, you know. And we're like, thanks for the heads up, you know. The horrible things they said were just, oh, they're just horrible. And then when we were in jail, 2 different stints, you know, boy, you find out what is being circulating in the community, because they'll tell you, you know. And we learned a lot of things in jail, but one of the main things I learned being with these ladies, a lot of these ladies, it's a drug problem that they have. And they lost their children, or they don't get to see their children, or have limited visitation with their children because of a drug problem.
Mhm.
And I would ask them, well, what did you have to do to get your kids back? Or what did you have to do to be able to visit your kids? And it would be something like, oh, I just have to pass 2 drug tests, or I have to a set of parenting classes. But my daughter, it was like a whole different standard, and the finish line kept changing. I mean, she had to jump through hoops, you know, live on her own without any help from anybody for this many months, and hold down a job for this many months. And she had when this all happened, when it came about in the beginning, she was working for Teen Challenge. She had graduated their program, and she went on to get training for leadership. So she was working for them. She had a safe place to live. The whole facility was designed for mothers and children to be reunited. She had a good job. She had been 2 years sober and clean, and
She had a car.
yeah, she had transportation. And so while they were investigating us, what they should have done is returned him to his mother. She
And
was
it was-
about ready for that anyway.
The facility was DHS approved for mothers to be with their children who were struggling with drugs. It was already approved for that, and there was mothers living there with their kids from the DHS system.
Right. So, but the Wagner DHS system wouldn't even think of it for her.
They said she can't have her child there.
Right, and they said it's faith-based and we can't do that. But anyway, what happened is they didn't have a cause to keep Clayton from his mother. And so the caseworker was filling out the paperwork for court, and she had to fill in the blank that said what was the cause, explain what the cause was. She didn't know what to put in there. So she reaches out to her supervisor and says, I can't think of a cause. Can you help me? And so there's this email that we have a copy of, them going back and forth with each other. Well, why don't you write this? Let's try that, And they're going back and forth like 2 or 3 pages trying to figure out what's the best thing that they can put in there to basically perpetrate fraud on the court, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And so through that, they justified keeping Clayton away from his mother, and they had no cause. I mean, it's just crazy. The little things that people have to do to have their kids in their life. But my daughter went through so many things. I mean, psychological evaluations, years of counseling, everything. She tried to do everything they wanted her to. Sometimes she'd falter in one area and then but it was a lot to do on her own. And they'd taken away her support system. She lost her baby, then her other son, through being kidnapped or withheld wrongfully. She lost us, which we were probably her greatest support system, because we were taken away and incarcerated. She was just thrown out there on her own, never having a chance to grieve. None of us have had a chance to grieve because we're still under the gun. So for 5 years we carry this. She carries this. We carry this in our heart until that day comes when we can feel like we can finally let down and live again. But it won't be until our family is restored. They set her up to fail. DHS, they would just seem ecstatic if she in some way didn't meet a standard or something, instead of helping her, because they're supposed to try to keep families together. They would just run with it. And then they would add lies. There was lies in the ISPs and the paperwork. I mean, blatant lies that they would make up and put in there. The caseworker said, Clayton, this child has watched his baby brother be brutally murdered in cold blood. That was never even alleged. I mean, that was not even something we were accused of. She just pulled that one out of somewhere. And she told one of the foster mom told one of the counselors that Clayton had been abused, molested every day of his life from the time he was born until they took him from us. That was never alleged. I mean, it's like that was a whole new one. It didn't even have any mix of truth with it. So
I'm so sorry.
It's just, I don't even know. We're just taking one day at a time, and we're just moving forward and praying that somehow Clayton will know in his heart that we haven't abandoned him, and that we love him, and that we're fighting for him, and that he hasn't lost all hope. He's been treated for depression and anxiety and everything else that got him all drugged up, I guess.
I think, are you paying child support?
Our daughter is, and she can't see them. They raised it to the maximum they could.
Right.
And she's struggling financially. So she is making some of the payments, but she's not been able to keep up. But she has none of the benefit of any of the visitations, even phone calls. She's not even getting updates on how he's doing in school, and what his medical condition is and his health or anything. She doesn't get any information.
That's
period.
Not even legal. But the thing with the judicial system is judges really don't have checks and balances. There's not really anybody they're really accountable to, or that keeps a real close watch over so they can pretty much, I hate to say it, but our experience has told us they can pretty much make up the rules as they go along.
Same
And,
here.
it's very sad. There has to be checks and balances. You can't have a healthy system without checks and balances. And there's so much secrecy in Oklahoma. Everything is secret. We can't talk about it because it involves a minor. And it's not like that in every state. We discovered, for example, Michigan. We know a family judge in Michigan. He was shocked when he found out that the DHS hearings are closed. He said, ours are open. He said it keeps things out in the open, you know, and
It's the only way to hold them accountable,
Yeah.
he said.
yeah, and the documents and the transcripts are open. Anybody can see them, and you know the argument in Oklahoma is, well, we have to do it this way to protect the children because something could happen to them. Well, according to the states that have an open system, their children have not experienced any repercussions from it. It's just been normal. I mean, it makes no sense, but ours it's just the perfect breeding grounds for deception, and the perfect breeding ground for corruption is darkness. Wherever there's not light, you know, the sun comes out, everything's exposed, you know.
Well,
We
it's
don't have-
all these incentives, you know, the Title 4D, B, and E that they're getting out of your daughter and
Mhm.
not letting her even see her own son when there's no issues. So, I mean, this is all revolving around money. They don't care about this kid. They just want the incentive.
Has to be, yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. We just found out recently, and I don't remember where you can go and find this, but the federal government pays incentives to DHS and CPS for every child that they put in foster care. And then they get another incentive if the child has to get special care or counseling. And then they get an additional incentive if the child is put on some kind of medication or drug. So there really is a lot of incentive. And then
and that's why they're keeping him from you, is because of all these incentives and the money they're making off of him. And I had some other interview where someone had said that when they put a kid in foster care, they get $13,000 for each kid. I'm sure that's like I mean, I'm sure every state's different.
right.
Or an adoption is like 13,000, and there's these figures, you know, 5,000 to put a kid place somewhere else. So it's all about the money. They don't care about reuniting families. They never did at all.
It's a crime.
It
is a crime.
Boggling. I can't think like that. I can't even hardly grasp that kind of concept. I mean, just how can you do that to a child?
The damage that they do is
and
horrible.
They really used him, Clayton, as a bargaining chip. In fact, a little over a year and a half ago, the DA made an offer through Bill's attorney and said, if the Woolleys, Desiree, our daughter, and us, if we would agree to not pursue custody of Clayton and give the custody over to the foster mom, that they would drop all the felony charges and they would arrange for generous visitation with Clayton to include holidays and sporting events. And we're like, okay, that makes no sense. You just don't offer that kind of thing to people that you believe are dangerous to children, unless you really know that they're innocent. That floored me. They ended up retracting it. A Fox News piece came out that exposed some stuff, and they got pretty angry, and they said they're taking the deal off the table. So anyway, but just the fact that they did make that offer and that we have it documented and witnesses, it's mind-blowing. It's a bargaining chip. I mean, he's treated like chattel.
Yes. Yes, all these children are treated like chattel. They're all being human trafficked through the system, or from one parent to an abusive parent.
Yes.
And that's the situation. His one of the reports from his trauma counselor that my daughter has says that he told the counselor that his foster mom or his guardian mom says to him all the time, "I'm going to get rid of you. I don't want you anymore. Nobody wants you." So
And
he lives in a constant state of, am I going to have a home tomorrow? I do, you know,
And
just
that's child psychological abuse, and technically, that foster parent should be charged with emotional abuse.
Absolutely.
and there's more other things that she's done and said, and the judge knows it because the reports have been turned into her, but nobody will do anything to protect him. Nobody will make a move to protect him. They'll go, "Well, we talked to her about it. It's all resolved." But it just keeps happening, and the counselor was warning them, saying that there's trouble here. This child's going to be permanently damaged.
Oh, yeah.
And she said to this and this, she submitted this to the DHS and to the judges, and they still wouldn't do anything. And she was very concerned. She was very concerned about, you know, how this was going to affect him in the long run. But
I can tell you how it's going to affect him in the long run. There was a letter written back June 8th of 2018. It was a letter to President Trump regarding family separation. Okay. The American Academy of Pediatrics has condemned these policies. Now, of course, this is also going on American soil, to our own people, saying that highly stressful experiences like family separation can cause irreparable harm, disrupting a child's brain architecture and affecting his or her short and long-term health. This type of prolonged exposure to serious stress, known as toxic stress, can carry lifelong consequences for children.
wow, we need that.
That's terrible.
So this has already been done. They've already damaged him.
Yes.
Are you well, I was going to ask if you were filing any lawsuits against the state or anything, or the county.
Yes.
Well, we have against the county and the people involved right now, but it's caught up in federal court. And in Oklahoma, we have a Indian tribe issue. The Supreme Court ruled on the McGirt hearing, and so that flooded the court system with all these crimes that were committed on Indian territory or against an Indian tribe member, and it's just backlogged the system. So civil cases have been pretty much parked and put on hold, and we've been in almost 2 years now in litigation, which hasn't gone anywhere. And we are, you know, we're trying. The problem is we've been tapped out. We've spent $500,000 on
Our family.
attorney fees, expert witnesses, and everything else has cost us everything. And so we are trying to continue the fight
Right.
as best we can.
We would be, like he said earlier, we would be in prison for life if we didn't have so much support from family and even from community. You know, they're constantly sending us emails telling us they're praying for us, and we're trying to learn to raise support because our families are kind of tapped out, you know, and we are. I mean, we had before this happened, you know, our lives were in such a different place. I mean, our house was paid off, and we were running successful businesses and taking care of the children. And it's just funny how, and just in a moment, and just in a day, and just in a moment of time, your whole life can be turned upside down. And,
Oh, I know.
I mean, one day it's just a normal day, and the next day, one little, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's amazing how fast everything can change.
You know, it's even cost our health. I mean, Lisa, she's gone through horrible health issues from I think it's from the stress that we've been under. She had a massive heart attack a year and a half ago, and now she's going in for some, you know, procedures and stuff. And so it's just a mess. You know, everything in our world has totally been turned around, and you know, but we're still fighting. And we, you know, we're still trying to get that's our whole goal now, is to get our grandson back.
Right. That's basically what we live for. And,
Mhm.
you know, we're not unreasonable people. We're not vindictive. We don't want to hurt anybody. We really don't even want to have to do all these lawsuits, but we feel like they have forced us in this direction
Mhm.
because of unwillingness to be reasonable. It's not, you know, we've forgiven every single person that's come against us, and we continually stand in that forgiveness, and we will continue to do so, but we doesn't mean that they shouldn't be held accountable. We all need accountability in our lives. It's the only way we do better. It's the only way we improve. It's the only way we make changes. Everybody has to have checks and balances, and nobody is above that.
And
Mhm.
also, they can turn around and do this again to someone else. So you have to
Right.
Oh, that's what he was saying earlier. You know, if you live in Wagner County and you have a baby, be careful. I mean, it
move
can
out.
turn on you in a moment, because as they say at the sheriff's department, there's no such thing as a SIDS death. So if anything happened to that child, and that it's not obvious, like you said, like a gunshot wound or something, then they're going to conclude that it has to be murder.
And the other thing is for us is that the statute of limitation never expires on murder.
Mhm.
And they can drop the charges, they can close the investigations, but down the road they can say, oh, we're going to redo this and arrest us again, and then we'll have to fight it all over.
Right.
We're trying to get the medical examiner's report amended
Mhm.
to say, you know, unknown cause of death or SIDS, whatever, you know, other than,
Mhm.
you know, murder, because that's the only thing that's going to bring this to an end, because that is the only evidence that they've used
Mhm.
besides the Saner's report, because they had nothing else.
And very interestingly, once we contacted the chief medical examiner about this, amending it, and we sent the doctor's reports and the evidence, we found out that just a few weeks after he got that, the ME that did this, that was going to be called into question, that did this autopsy, quit.
Oh, how
And
convenient.
I know, crazy, isn't it? And then the same nurse, we've also got suit against her. She's
Mhm.
been pursuing our attorneys, asking if there's any way we can settle outside of court, so she doesn't have to be held accountable in court. So
Mm.
a lot of people have been backpedaling recently.
Interesting.
It
I'm
is.
very glad you came on to this podcast to speak out, and because this can happen to anyone.
Mm.
Oh, yes.
Is there any way people can reach you if they have any questions?
I would refer them again to the website, rescueclayton.com, because they can email us there. And we check those emails, you know, several times a week.
Mhm.
And if anybody feels led to help financially, that would be great, because like I said, all this campaign, the things we're doing for the Clayton campaign cost a lot of money, and the legal fees cost money.
Everything we do costs a lot of money.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So we've been recently asking people if anybody would be interested, business owners or whatever, in making a donation for 12 months, you know, once a month, whatever, $25 or something,
Mhm.
even $5. But it would be a great blessing, but we don't want that to be the focus. We really want people to be sharing the story, calling the DA, Jack Thorpe in Wagner County, and asking for justice to be done. We want Judge Brown's office to be contacted. Judge Elizabeth Brown, she's actually from a different county, because they burned through all the judges in Wagner County and had to get another one. And then also the DHS, Leslie Nix, the district director, and demanding that she change the report, the initial report, from substantiated charges to unsubstantiated charges, and that she recommend to the court that Clayton be restored to his family. There's people could call, and they could even call on a regular basis, like once a week, and it's very important that the word get out and that the pressure continue, because otherwise this just goes away into oblivion, and this child is destroyed.
Mhm.
I mean, destroyed. I can't even imagine what kind of teenager he would be if we can't get him back pretty soon and start getting help for him.
Yes. And all that information's on the website. There's
Yeah.
call to action. It's an extensive website. It's not just a page. It's
Okay.
got multiple. It's got a lot of evidence. It's got a lot of information on
Doctor's
there.
reports.
So it's a very good source.
And there's the phone calls to call where to call the judge.
Yeah, all that's there's
Great.
email, phones, and there's what the call to action
Mhm.
to do, and so it's pretty easy to go through it. And
Yeah.
and
But we, I'm not too proud to beg.
Mm.
And so, I'm asking the community and the state and even people all over the nation to help us. And we need your help. We need your help. And we're also putting the word out to the body of Christ, who is our spiritual family. We need you now.
yeah, and if they're connected to like print shops, billboards,
They want to make a donation of a billboard or print shop
or
signs or
anything, like they could give either discounts or they know experts and they have contacts for attorneys. Are very difficult in this field. Family practice is very hard to find competent attorneys, and if they are, their fees are off the charts. And just help in those areas, legal help, any kind of help, support, getting the information out to vast nationally, because I think the only way that this is going to make difference here in Oklahoma is if it gets national attention. Not just our case. DHS is out of control here, and there's so many families that have contacted us with stories that are just grieve you, make just totally abusive. And the more we can get information out to the public, the more pressure can be applied.
Yes, there are several families that have contacted us, and a lot of them, not all of them, can substantiate what they're saying. I mean, they have the evidence, and they're also being ignored. So, I mean, there's definitely, as you said, definitely some kind of incentive that makes them fight so hard to hang on to these children. Here, there are 6,000 DHS workers and 6,000 children in foster care.
It's abusive.
It's like one employee for every child. But I know there's some other programs for the elderly as well, but it's just crazy. I mean, that is a huge money-making industry right there.
It is.
I'm not, and I don't know what to say about the foster mom guardian. I think that she was lied to. I think that she was deceived. I don't think she was kept abreast of what was actually going on, or the truth, or that we are exonerated. But I know she knows a lot more now, and she's still playing along with them. And she could do the right thing.
For
We
the
knew that
incentive.
family.
Yes.
We knew that family for 7 years before any of this happened. They'd never met Clayton before. And DHS approached them and talked them into taking him, because they wouldn't ignore, they ignored everybody on our side, pastors, family members, who many went through training to be approved for foster care, went through all that. You have your home checked, your finances checked, your background checks, and go through all these classes, and applied to take Clayton, and they would not acknowledge anybody unless they thought we were guilty or didn't so they went to people that were against us.
Oh, I'm so sorry, but I'd like to have you back on my podcast again with your
Oh, we would be honored.
Anytime.
Okay. Hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Bill and Lisa Woolley in the future and other exciting guests. I thank you again for speaking out.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all for watching. Thank you for being there. Thank you for pulling for us. We need you. We need you like we've never needed help before.
Thank you.
Clayton needs you.